Welcome back to part 2, and we were carrying on with rather than seeing it as a brain, an amygdala trapped in a looping, unresolved electrical firing and flooding storm. So, with another systemic failure, number 2, some clinicians falsely believe that explaining the mechanics of the brain will overwhelm or distress the client. In reality, for many survivors, not knowing what is happening to their brain is what causes the terror and feelings that they're losing their minds. So, general talk therapy, like standard cognitive behavioral therapy, is notoriously poor at handling complex trauma. General therapists are trained to challenge a person's thoughts, which can feel completely provoking, gaslit, and abusive to a survivor who is dealing with an automatic physiological response to past horrors. So, how does the trauma loop work in our brains? The trauma loop works like this. There's an external trigger, so something outside of us triggers a memory or a situation, flashback, a feeling, a smell. The amygdala is like the smoke detector, and sensing the trouble, overheating, the brain overheating, the body overheating, sensing the trouble, it fires instantly based on the right prefrontal cortex emotions or perceptions. So the right prefrontal cortex's emotions or perceptions are going off, so we're perceiving danger, and to the point where we start feeling really intense and thinking really intense or paranoid or worried or whatever it is. The amygdala goes off, which, like a smoke detector, is going to alert the whole house of the situation. So the parasympathetic nervous system perceives a mortal threat and goes for F, fight, flight, fawn, freeze, looping. So the right prefrontal cortex senses this danger, it's going off, it's flooded, the amygdala is alerted, the parasympathetic switches on, the 4F defense system comes into play, kicks in, all these little fighters are flighting and fawning behaviors, these loops of behavior, how we've done them before or have been shown to do, or what I suppose, come up with at the first time ever doing them by instinct, they come into play. So the thalamus and the hippocampus, which are the timekeeper, it gaps out. This gaps out. It fails to stamp the threatened memory as a past situation, having already happened. So perhaps we have a situation where the counselor is triggering us the way we've been triggered before by somebody, and this could be bringing up childhood unresolved issues, as they're saying, which is just the unhealed trauma looping in the wound, and it's these broken core memories. So this therapist may be very controlling or very judgmental, and it reminds us of a particular abuse we went through or an abuser, and our brain is already gone into this 4F system, and we're reacting now, and the timekeeping is gapping out. Like, we are not understanding that what's happening before us has how we're feeling about it has already happened in the past. What we're seeing before us, we're reacting the same way we reacted or would have reacted to something in the past. And that's how they, as a professional, the clinician, would see that, instead of something they're causing in the moment, and it's very sticky of a situation because I've been in those therapies so many times, over 2 decades, and I have done the work to forgive past situations, to do anger management and introspection and emotional regulation and grounding techniques and all of these things. And what happens is I can still be triggered. Uh, in my perspective, it just, I don't relive. Suppose it's like the past situation that has happened in childhood, and I'm still triggered by a new situation, whether it's a therapist or not. But I'm not reacting the way I would have to the original situation. But they don't see it like that. A trained professional, they don't see you as having gained skills. But this was my situation. Everything under pressure fractures. So if you're going to put that immense pressure on a properly regulating system as it is, the emotional system without the left cortex switched on, if you're going to overload it, flood it, pick at it, throw heavy labels at it, and expect nothing happens, that there will be no reaction, and even at best a faulty response, they don't see it that way. They see it as no, straight up threat. So the brain generally believes that the abuse is rehappening right now because the left prefrontal cortex has been overridden and knocked offline. The logical watchtower or crown of salvation. So your prefrontal cortex is the logical watchtower, but your left one specifically is in charge of your logic. So it's right here in our forehead, and it's also the crown of salvation that is biblically talked about. So the left PFC goes offline in this crisis mode. Our blood pressure drops. The capacity for rational, structured language shuts down. So we may be reacting. However, we can be very calm. It doesn't mean it's like a dangerous zone. But because it's a dangerous zone, people are energetic creatures, and they tend, and I've noticed a lot, it doesn't matter your intentions. It doesn't matter the fragile state of what state you're in, emotionally, psychologically, physiologically. They don't care. As long as you have that lower frequency or the susceptibility to be there, especially when we're dealing with the enemy. Now, other people have the same emotional mind. And so, likely, those triggering us are just mirroring where we are. And a lot of people often push people over the edge, maybe not meaning to, but in this context, professionals should know better. But they're human too. They could have had a bad day, and they're, they don't want to deal with somebody for the 20th time, so they take it out on you, that kind of thing. And like attracts like. So all around, it's a bad situation if we don't know our brain. I'm not suggesting get into these types of situations or dynamics just to find out, but they do exist. They're alive and well, and when they exist, they are and can truly work against us. They are not for our benefit. And once you're in a system like this, a psychological system, dealing with professionals, nurses, doctors, therapists, legal people, healthcare, education, they all take this perspective, and they see mentality as you must operate as the expected status quo type of neurotypical, or you're a degenerate, or they don't maybe say this, but we are less than, and we are psychological, or we are, they don't treat us with equal treatment. And so the agitated and looping body is flooded with adrenaline, and the mind frantically replays the data, ruminating to find some sort of safety. So the triggers, the AI refusal of our queries and our questions, especially if we put personal circumstances, the cold clinician people or professionals all looping as threats. So this is the stage that could be triggering this process, the shutdown of our own brain. So the re-traumatization occurs then, and the system shuts down, confirming the brain's worst fears. I'm unsafe, misunderstood, trapped. The loop now goes out to scan again, only deeper and more intense. So what I find is that when we've gone through something recently, or something traumatic, so traumatic, has happened, and then something similar or as intense has now happened, the trauma we go back to is the last deepest dysregulation, that the looping that we have experienced, or if we're in a state of survival, then we kind of have an instinct or a predisposition to resort to looping before responding. It's out of habit, and it's automatic, because in survival mode, say living on the streets or in poverty or lack of money, constant stress, constant battling neighbors, and constant battling service people for just everything's going wrong. Where something can go wrong, it's going wrong, and we're worn out. Our system is flooded, we're stressed, this sort of thing. And then we can have a day or a week of calm and peace, and then something sooner or later comes up in life, as things always do, and instantly we're stressed. But it shouldn't be as bad as the situation is calling for, but emotionally, mentally, we're checked out with the mountainous stress that we've been going through or have originally experienced. So when we are allowed to see this process of our own brain, and understand it fully, at least in a working fashion, have a working definition and understanding, a woman sees the specific physical sequence, and that their agitation is predictable, biological, a biological consequence of severe stress and not a behavioral failure, or outright solely just a cognizant choice. When she can see this workings, when we can see this, and when we're allowed to see this brain setup that's happening, we have control over any future loops, at least in a sense that we can either begin healing or close the patterns that are hurting us or have been hurting us, and actually finally be able to, with the pieces of info that have been kept from us our whole life, know how our brain works and how it loops trauma and toxic patterns, so that we can protect ourselves. And the key here is that the world is designed that they don't want us to know how we operate. Now, we have a world full of predator, opportunistic, predatorial people, dark triadic characters, and even the institutions are designed to keep the rich rich and the poor poor, so to speak, even mentally, that is. So if you are not rich mentally, you can know a lot of things, especially neurodivergent people, we know a lot of psychology and life experience that neurotypical people don't usually have to go through. It's not that it's a better thing or even good. However, just like a soldier who comes from war, it's not great that they had to go, but they're a hero after because of what they've learned and had to endure. And they can reiterate those stories to help others grow from and learn from. But in power positions, we get those dark personalities where they are envious of people with more personality than them. And that would be kind of a backhanded that, I mean, I've gotten it personally from the psychological industry. People envious, neurotypical people, very envious that they have not gone through such things. And they want the fame of being able to speak or say things or teach, or they don't want us to know these workings of our own brain or others, or especially theirs if they're a dark triadic personality type. And they don't want us to teach them anything. They want to take this knowledge and teach it themselves. So my take is from experience. Abusers prey upon women and vulnerable, not knowing our own brain. Clinicians blame victims for their problems, so victim blaming and victim shaming, and they hide the root cause by hiding the root cause. So yes, a person can take 10 years of psychology and read 50 practical books on the abuser's makeup, their mental makeup, and the abuse type that we are. Abuse type, we are not a type. The type of abuse that we've suffered, we can read about all of that. But what we share here, cut straight to the point, kind of takes the cuckoo right out of their clock that they're using against us, of their equations, and gives us a vision like Jesus tells us in Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. So the whole premise here is that women who want to embody their femininity, come back into their self-power, have not been given a voice, have gone through extreme hardships, have come from broken backgrounds, haven't learned psychology because we've not been taught it in schools, and in fact the industry itself, the corporations, they don't want people to per se learn psychology unless you go to college, I guess, and it's your calling, because they want to control the masses through psychological deceptions. So it's a very narcissistically, I don't know about designed, but just operated world right now. It's a very narcissistically operated world and dark triadic world where abusers, manipulators, deceivers, the father of lies and all his deceivers, people, they want us in the dark. And I would venture to say it's a psychological dark ages, albeit we are in a psychological war, so to speak, and we have been since the IT age has taken off, because now at a rapid rate that we have not seen as humanity before, everybody has access to psychology articles, posts, you name it, online for free, books, and we can learn about our brain. That's one thing. We can read all that. That takes time. But with AI, we can learn overnight what scholars, people, students take a year to learn. I mean, we may not know the entire thing by memory unless we practice it, but now we're aware. We can't unsee it. And that's the thing. if we have this awareness as women, they can't shut our eyes anymore. We are essentially awake to the higher consciousness. We do have to fill it in with light and practice and wholeness and embodiment and well-being. But once we got our foot in that door, we don't need them to hold the door open for us, whoever them are, but them, the they, the people who, they may not all be purposely malicious against us, but they don't need to be telling us what's in our brain, and especially what's not in our brain, or labeling and determining opinions and judgments and meanings based on our behavior, our actions, our thoughts, our speaking. That's for us. We're the artists. We paint the picture that we choose. So without this, we have really no autonomy, no sovereign power. The double-minded thing is a very real reality. We may not be double-minded in choice. We could have been baptized as a child. We could have been baptized years ago. And we get to now, and we still might not have autonomy and a psychological understanding, which leaves us susceptible to the enemy and to the predators out there, and our own self-sabotaging. That system is a self-sabotaging system on the dopamine aspect. It's the reward system that there are two sides of the reward system, the side that can fail us and the side that can also harm us. So if we don't have a online left prefrontal cortex regulated system, so a whole physiological spirit man and woman system going and strengthened by the word, upheld, defended, got this helmet of salvation on, learning psychological things about our specific type of lived experience, lived abuses, then we are a double mind, not by choice. Just a very easily gullible double mind, and we believe what others tell us. We don't know our own understanding. I would encourage anybody going through that to learn. It took me decades, the hard way, hardship, struggle, trial and error, a lot of legal issues in terms of family court and lawyers and authority figures, people, whatnot. My whole reputation over fighting for my psychological freedom since I was a youth, and my psychological sovereignty, being told I'm this terrible person, I'm this crazy person, only to gain that freedom, still not know what's going on. Are they right? Am I wrong? Where am I at? Until the last few years. And I'm not ashamed of that. I guess I could say I've reinvented the wheel, some would say, but I had to. And this is the point here. I don't want anybody to have to do that. The purpose of this channel is to provide revelations, psychological revelations, spiritual revelations, feminine energy embodiment revelations, on easily graspable, attainable things that we don't have to search for decades and a lifetime. And AI can tell us these things, but we need to know what we're looking for. And that's the age we're going into, where I feel that we're coming out of patriarchy and we're going back into this embodiment of wholeness, this feminine balance, but without feminine proper psychology, empowered feminine psychology, we won't have, personally as women, very much success as, you know, that a part of that equation of the world, the dynamic. Um, and we need more players that can, you know, bring this light, this torch to others who need to know how our minds, yes, tick, think, operate, so that we can protect ourselves, because that's the bottom line. And enough is enough. We don't have to be ashamed anymore. We're in information technology age, day and age. So asking for this information should not be contemptuous, and seeking it should definitely not be contemptuous. Maybe it was a couple decades ago, which it was, but thankfully that's fading out. But there are still some professionals out there who are doing this, and awareness will stop that.